Okay, in this daily abolitionist video, I want to speak about something that is very important. This is a very significant daily abolitionist video because I would like to explain the meaning of the abolish human abortion symbol and explain why it is that we put it on pretty much everything. The first important point in this video to understand is that this is not our logo. We do not consider the AHA to be our logo. We consider it to be a symbol. See, organizations have logos. Abolish human abortion is an ideology, and so an ideology has a symbol. So pretty important. We don't consider this to be our logo. We consider it to be our symbol. By our, we just mean abolitionists, and we know there are going to be varieties of abolitionists. We know that, and there's no way to control exactly what an abolitionist thinks about everything and what, makes someone not an abolitionist. But there are a few very simple things, and that is simply that you can break our culture down into those who are for the continued legalization of abortion and those who are for its abolition, those who are against its continued legalization. On one side, you have people who are pro-choice. You have people who are, personally pro-life, but they would not impose their own moral opinion on other people. And then you have people who are against abortion, but they think that it's not something you can abolish. It's kind of a necessary evil, and the best thing that we can do is sort of contain it, keep it from spreading, defund it, regulate it and legislate it in such a way that we have less and less abortions. Those are all on one side. On the other side of this divide, you have the abolitionists. And now, abolitionists are people who generally believe that abortion is wicked. They call it sin. They consider it to be evil. It is in conflict with a higher law, which even if 99% of the population said, no, it's perfectly legal, it's perfectly right, they would say, no, it's perfectly wicked and it needs to be abolished. Okay? So these are abolitionists. They are for the abolition of abortion. These people, pro-choicers, etc., are for the regulation of abortion. Okay? So anyone who considers himself an abolitionist can and should and ought to let the world know that they're an abolitionist by wearing the abolitionist symbol. But that does get us into another point of view, like what does the symbol mean? Like before you start putting it on things or signing it by your name, you want to know what it means and how it works. And the idea here is that you got to abolish human abortion. Very simple, right? Higher law demands the abolition of lower laws, which are not right. They're upside down, okay? Now, why is abortion wrong? Like, why is it wrong to end the development and birth of an organism? Like, why is that wrong? We do it all the time, plants and animals, you stop their development for all sorts of reasons. Why is it wrong in the case of humans? Well, the idea is that according to the higher law that God has laid down and has explained and is written on all of our hearts, so even those in the world who don't believe in the Bible and reject our God have some idea of this moral law, this higher law. The idea is that you cannot kill humans, all right? Abortion is the legalization of the right to kill human beings. Now, human beings created in the image of God, all right? So it's abolish human abortion, okay? It's very simple. There's no other hidden meanings. It's not going to mean anything different. It's just abolish human abortion, higher law, abrogating lower law, because lower law allows for the destruction of human beings. And we are not allowed to destroy human beings, right? Okay, so that's all early points. Other significant point is that we are not the first abolitionists in history to create and use a symbol in this way. Everyone knows about the 18th and 19th century abolitionists of slavery. They made the word abolition famous. But there was an earlier group of abolitionists living in the 1st through the 4th century in ancient Rome, in the areas in the Roman Empire, who basically were dissidents of their culture of death in much the same way that we are today. So the early church, the birth of the church, the early Christians, they found themselves living in a culture where it was perfectly fine and legal to abandon a child that you did not want. Unwanted children were either raised up, that's where that phrase comes from, or they were left on the ground to die. This is a legal practice. It was considered, normal, and they had places in the culture where you could go and you could leave your children to be abandoned and died and killed by the elements. Other things that were perfectly fine were infanticide. There was widely practiced infanticide, and there were abortionist guilds, herbal abortions and even some early surgical abortions that were practiced in the ancient world. Now, Christians knew that these practices, though they were widely practiced and approved by all the humanist philosophers and Roman sages, they knew that these were wrong and dehumanizing and that you couldn't just destroy people in the womb, right? So Christians spent a whole lot of their time rescuing children from the trash heaps and riverways of Rome, all right? They set up the first hospitals. They turned, they sometimes, created orphanages out of places where prostitutes used to live. They transformed their culture, they turned it upside down, and one of the things that they did in doing this was abolish human abortion at their time. All right, we'll say more about it later. But they had a symbol. Perhaps you've seen it. It's been downgraded these days. Look on the back of cars. But they put it on everything. They put it on their murals. They would etch it in the ground. They would sign it to their names. They would make a symbol in the air. They used a symbol because they wanted to identify themselves as not with the rest of the culture. Now, the 18th and 19th century abolitionists, they had a symbol. This, too, was theological in nature. It was the am I not a man and a brother symbol. And it was of the African slave on one knee, holding his arms up to God with the chains hanging down, kind of beseeching God to rescue him. And it said, am I not a man and a brother? This was their way of saying that the African slave was a man. He was created in the image of God, right? He was valuable. And a brother was saying that Jesus Christ died for him just as well, just as much as the white European who had enslaved him. So it was the image of God and the incarnation of Christ. The abolitionists of slavery put that symbol on everything, right? It was not a graphic image. If someone's told you that, they just hadn't studied and they were trying to argue for graphic images. Graphic images are fine. The abolitionists of slavery had graphic images like slave ships, they had diagrams, they had illustrations of the inhumanities that went on board slave ships and all this kind of stuff. But the symbol that they used was just supposed to be cool. It was actually a romantic image. They put it on women's brooches. They put it on jewelry like hairpins, clips, money clips. They put it on watches, coins. They put it on things they would put in their gardens, like British people like gardens. They would put it on ship manifestos. They would put it on crates. They put it everywhere because the idea was they wanted to let the world know, hey, I am an abolitionist. So individuals, organizations, businesses, people, churches would say, I'm an abolitionist. How can you tell? Because this symbol. All right, that's what this is for. We made it easy to draw. We made it easy to reproduce. We don't want to own it. We're not trying to make money off of it. If you're an individual and you want to let the world know you're an abolitionist, sure, you can wear a t-shirt, you can wear a bracelet, you can wear a button, you can get a tattoo, you can do whatever you want. Just let the world know you're an abolitionist. If you're an organization, maybe you're already some pro-life organization, you're like, you know what? We're not for the regulation of abortion. We're for its abolition. Keep your logo. Use the symbol. It's just a way of saying I'm part of the abolitionists. Now, last thing. Why is our symbol not like a little cute baby? Like kind of in the same shape as the am I not a man and a brother? With something like am I not human? Were you not once here yourselves? Well, we do have that as a symbol. People put that on everything. But we live in different times. When Josiah Wedgwood designed the first abolitionist medallion, it was because that was the style in which imagery was being portrayed in their culture. We live in a world today where things are not as pictographic, they are much more typographic, and they are much more cryptic, and they are much more viral. So the AHA does kind of look sharp. I mean, we're not going to go with some flowers or like a little baby wrapped in an American flag, like being rescued by a eagle with butterfly wings. No, abortion is a vicious, dehumanizing act that has already gone on 3 or 4 times while you were watching this video. The symbol worn by those who seek to abolish it is going to be sharp, and it's going to be everywhere. So feel free to put it on anything. You can write it, you can draw it, you can make it, you can buy stuff. We do own the trademark and the copyright and all that to it, but we do not intend to keep it to ourselves. The intention is to give it to the world, give it to the rest of the dissidents, and let it be used as a marker to the culture and as a symbol to the world that we will not rest until we've effected the total abolition of human abortion.